Hello and welcome back to the channel. The topic today is the Colour Equaliser in Darktable. So it looks like a simple module to use where you can just change the hue, the saturation or the brightness of certain colours in the image. But there are some subtleties, and when you understand what they are and how the different sliders work and what they do, I'm persuaded that you'll get better value out of the module. I'm Nicholas, and let's have a look at this together. So here we are in Darktable 5, and this is the Colour Equaliser module. The presentation is quite simple. There are three tabs, one to change the hue, one to change the saturation, and one to change the brightness of the tone that you have selected with this little colour picker. So wherever you click on the image, it will put a vertical line to show what hues you are affecting. If you're not on one of these nodes, these dots here that are called nodes, it means that when you modify it, then the curve, the maximum of the curve here, if I modify this part here, which has nothing to do with the line is just to show you where that color is on the spectrum. It has actually no effect on the modification. The maximum of this curve, so the tones I'm affecting the most, are slightly away from the tone I selected. And this is what the node placement slider is. And I'll move it over, and so either one way or the other. But the idea is to get a node. So I have a node perfectly there, and I'll double click. And it's this node I'll move up. That's how it works. Let's move down a bit. Um, so that's how it works. Now we do have this funny wave line here where some of the tones are being shifted up, but that is a mathematical formula to get smooth gradations of the tones. Now underneath this node placement thingy is a list of options which you can conveniently forget. But well, I think most of the meat of the video will be actually to explain what that does and how it works. So we'll get down to that a bit later if you like. There is one adjustment which is available on the hue curve, which is not available on the saturation and brightness. If you see, it's this thing called hue curve, which will enable me to tighten the modifications or make them wider around the tone that I want to change. If I have the narrowest, then I'm actually only moving, you see, in my gradient from green to blue, I'm only affecting a very narrow portion of the spectrum. So only this area, it's quite a wide gradient I made so we can see how it works in detail. And if I spread it, then you can see it's shifting all the colors here in the yellows and greens, and obviously not affecting the blues, or at least not too much. So that's the hue curve. Let's reset that to how it was. Saturation curve, we can just change saturation, but here we do not have any indication or any way to make the curve narrower. And I'll double click on that, and brightness, I'll just increase the brightness of those tones and decrease if we like. So positive, negative, remember that positive. So hot, it's red, negative, it's blue. You'll see that later when we look at the masks in the options. Let's click on use guided filter just to keep that all the time. So if you don't like messing around with curves and you want to get something a bit closer to what there is in Lightroom, the HSL sliders that everyone raves about for black and white, and I will do a video soon on black and white photography, because that is what I do, my own personal photography, kind of 90% of the time. If you control and click on this, then instead of having 3 tabs, you have 4. And here we have the HSL sliders. So if you can pick the right one, oops, the wrong one, then you can do exactly the same thing in hue, saturation, and brightness. There we are. I should have known. Third one. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Should have known. And the options are the fourth tab here. The options go down. So that's a different presentation to do exactly the same thing. Now I've changed my image. These are all artificial images, the TIFF files made in Affinity Photo. And the purpose is to understand the tools. And then straight away after, I will be showing you some real life examples of how to change, to modify photos in a very precise manner. So let's go to the saturation. So I'm going to pick, this is actually going to be a doddle to choose the point because wherever I click, I have the same hue because I just made a gradient from desaturated to fully saturated on the left. So that's easy, and I'll just choose the tone. Okay, we'll go the other way. There we are, exactly on. And let's say I want to change the saturation and increase the saturation. So I'm actually increasing the saturation of that particular tone everywhere in the image. So I'm going to forget the white level for the moment, and I'm going to forget the hue analysis for the moment, and we're going to see the saturation because this one is one of the easy ones to understand. We have a saturation threshold. The threshold is the point after which you don't want any modifications to be made. So it's actually going to clip the selection mask of the tones. So if I click on the mask, I can see what's being changed. Everything that's red, positive, so it means the saturation is increased, and everything that is blue is negative, and we can see the negative parts here, and the white, the grey, the neutral colour means it's not being changed. So this is the threshold. If I move the threshold up, there we are. I'm actually pushing down um, the point from which it actually will or will not act this thing here. So if we're looking here, then as I've moved the threshold up, it means that the more desaturated colours will not be affected. That's how it's working. Now, why is it red and blue? Well, if I move this the other way, that is not the point. This is the points that are affected. So it doesn't mean we're pushing it up or down. It just means this red is affected and blue is not. So we have a curve here. You see this green line here. Now that's interesting because it will actually give me the way the change is made. You see the amount of saturation here doesn't play on the mask of what's happening. But if I change the contrast and if I lower the contrast, then you can see there's a gradient that's happening between the colours that are selected, affected, and the colours that are not. And I can make that, if I increase the contrast, that will go up. And you can see the curve is giving me an idea of there's a low contrast and we have a very high, a very hard transition between the two. So that is the saturation threshold. Now on this image, which is a uniform square of green on a radial gradient from the very same green to blue, let's pick a colour. So it's wherever you pick there in the center will have no importance. I can increase the saturation and I can increase the brightness. Now if we look at the white level here, this white level, if I move it down, will have an effect on what the maximum brightness of the pixels is. That's what it says in the documentation. Now, in reality, I don't think I've ever used this on a real photo. That's how it works. You see, if I have very bright greens there, then if I move this white level down, it will decrease the maximum authorized value of brightness for the modified pixel. Anyway, let's move that back and look at the effect radius. Now, the effect radius, if we look here, we can clearly see that this rectangle is made with a sharp edge. And as I increase the effect radius, I am actually making here what is called a guided filter. Now, the guided filter is something you've already seen in the tone equalizer. In the tone equalizer, if I change from EIGF to guided filter and put that down to the center and switch on the display. Well, it's not very good, is it? There, okay. The mask quantization. It's something like, from what I gather, the either the filter diffusion, where we're kind of losing the edges, or more like the smoothing diameter, but we're kind of in very small radiuses, and I can't get this one to 0, I don't think. This will only work if I actually disable the guided filter. So we're kind of making a mask like that. So it affects edges. Um, this is what this seems to be doing. We're kind of having an effect on the edges or not. I'm going to move the brightness a bit there. We can actually see something. Now you can see that we're getting more or less blurry edges, which means that the effect is spilling on both sides. Important to remember, the effect spills on both sides. So that's the effect radius. So remember, that is all about edges. And the last image I'm going to show you in this series of TIFFs is a radius where I actually added noise to it. So we don't have uniform tones. If we look carefully, I'm zooming in at 600%. I've added some color noise to it. So there we are. This is to show the hue analysis. So I'm going to choose, let's pick the tone here. So it's actually taking an average. I'm not going to go wildly because of the noise. It is picking the kind of the average color around there. So you see we're in the same ballpark hues. And I'll increase the brightness there somewhat. And we'll have a look here at the hue analysis filter and see what happens. There's a radius in pixels, and that is how it makes a mask. Because here we're actually making a mask of what is picked and what is not picked. And in that mask of what is picked and not picked, we can choose to affect down to certain thresholds of saturation. We can also choose to smooth the edges of that mask with the effect radius. And this is actually being used to make the initial mask. And if I increase that, you can see, I don't know how much you can see in YouTube, but you should be able to see if you look at the outer edges. I might zoom in a little bit and see that we're actually selecting a lot more pixels there. It's getting blotchy, you see. That means we're selecting a lot more. And down to 0, it is only picking the tones that are the green ones. It's not affecting anything else. And this will be able to, with this, we'll be able to smooth the effect, either to blend in neighboring colors, maybe on skin tones, on clothes, on all sorts of textured elements, to be able to pick them so we don't create noise. And sometimes we'll want to reduce it. If we have kind of hard edges and we don't want it to spill over, you'll be able to reduce the hue analysis radius. There we are. I got it. Okay, let's move on to some real images then. Okay, so let's take this photo that I took in Thailand with the three monks. So they are. It was early in the morning, and they are going round the local town, and people are filling their. They take bags and bowls, and people fill them with offerings for the day. And imagine you want to increase the visual appeal of these monks' robes. So we'll go into Colour Equaliser, and we'll kind of pick a hue somewhere in the oranges. So I can pick here. You can see I'm not very far. Move a little bit, you see, from here. Move left. So we're in the same ballpark tones. So somewhere in the middle would be there, and I'll put the node placement correctly. And I want to increase brightness and maybe a little bit of saturation. Now I'm going to exaggerate this just a little bit for the video, but I think I would go a bit more subtly um, if I was actually doing this for my own image. So there we are, that's popping. And you think, where's the problem? Leave it at that. And let's move on to the next picture. Until we zoom in, we switch on and off, then you can see that I'm not only affecting the robes, I am also affecting the skin here on the man's face. And I am also affecting, and if you can see this, but the brightness, you see the skin here on the back of that particular monk, and I don't want to affect those. So what I can do is go into the saturation threshold mask. Now I know these robes are very brightly, very saturated. So if I move this up, then I'm actually everything that's in blue. Remember, won't be affected. So I can actually move that. I can actually move it right up to the maximum. I can try and type in 35 to move up further, but it won't. It won't go. Um, the other option is to press on Shift and move up, um, but that won't go. So that's the maximum I've got. Um, what we do see is that by doing that, we have a very defined line here between the skin and the robe. And if I move the contrast down, see what's happening is the effect will be less. It's less red, you see, so we have less of an effect. And here we have more of an effect. Now, do I want a smooth line or not a smooth line? We'll have to look at that. And the other thing we can look at is the effect radius and see if I need to put some kind of smoothing on the edges. Now, there's not only this edge, there are loads of edges inside there, so we need to look at that too. Right, so here we are in colour. I'm actually going to leave it zoomed at, what are we, 400%. Um, if I now move the contrast, now this is what I'm doing. The contrast at the lowest, contrast at its highest. Now the difference is subtle, but I am definitely getting more detail with a low contrast. And the effect radius, this one is a bit less subtle. Is here you see I have very saturated colours, and as I move the effect radius up, then it's actually spilling over into the edges and giving me the effect of kind of shadows and lightness here on the effect radius. You can see there that with a high effect radius, it's quite pleasing. Now that means it's kind of spilling over, probably. Although I have a very sharp mask here. I don't have too much spill there, but I have lots of spill inside, and that is fine for me. And if we look carefully, then as I show you here, I'm not affecting the skin at all of the people around. I'm affecting actually everything that's white here on the edges. I'm not affecting too much either, but that will actually give me some modelling effect. I'm quite pleased um, with that first image. Then let's see another picture. I forgot what we could do is you can also mix because we have a mask made with this guided filter, but we can also, which is brilliant in Darktable, is you can use a mask for everything. Have a hue mask. Let's pick the hues here of the robes. If I press on M, I'll see what's been selected. I can feather that. So you can see there is some spilling on the skin there. I can try and tighten by moving those sliders in a little bit, but I'm losing the masks. But what it is definitely doing is there are parts here of the robes that are not selected. Now, nothing to worry about the faces here because my guided filter is protecting those. But what we can see, if I zoom in a little bit here, if I switch off the guided, not the guided filter, the parametric mask and switch it on again, then we do have a slightly more subtle effect. You see here we have some darks. We have more effect in the brightness, which is giving me a less flat image. If I switch it on, here is very sharp. I could make a snapshot out of that. We can have a look. Definitely here in this part, I'm retaining some of the darks there and a little bit there on the creases, and we have it very subtly here as well. You see, you can work out there kind of a more subtle change. Um, the problem you see when you increase brightness and saturation is you're actually flattening the image, losing contrast. So this parametric mask can help save that a little bit. Let's move on now to the next picture. Now here we have an image of a lady preparing flowers for the temple. And yes, I know it says no photo here, but I only saw that afterwards. Let's go to Colour Equaliser, just show you something a bit curious. So let's say I want to change the colour of the flowers. Now, why you'd want to do that, I don't know. But I've chosen the colour and I'll change these to a pretty pink. Now I can use the hue curve to kind of um, just choose the flowers and have less of the pink spilling out everywhere, which is, you can see pink kind of everywhere in the image now, especially if I switch it on and off. You can see, especially in the skin tones, they've turned distinctly pink. And something curious, you see, is that, well, there are some things that have an effect. Let's zoom in to the flowers there. And the hue analysis will actually help to smooth out the look. I don't know if you can see this, but there is a change. It's got the kind of yellow in the center there. But the hue analysis will give me kind of a better mask, slightly better. It's very slight. The saturation threshold and effect radius don't seem to have any effect here. And if I click on this, then I don't have that green curve anywhere. And the saturation threshold slider does nothing, or at least not much anyway, and the effect radius doesn't seem to have much of an effect either. Not as much as if you're changing the saturation and the brightness. So that's something a little bit strange if you just want to change the hue in a photo. Um, that's not what I wanted to do in this image. Now, what I'd really like to do on this image is to brighten the skin tones. So the idea would be to choose a skin tone, just have a look at different skin tones and kind of pick one somewhere in the middle, place the node, increase the brightness, and maybe increase just a little bit of the saturation just for the example. Now, if we have a look, if we look close up here, then you'll notice that there is quite a lot of blotchiness there. Um, Not really something very nice. Now, the first thing we can do is denoise. And you see that the Colour Equaliser will pick hues. But if there's lots of colour noise in the photo, then you're going to introduce a lot of artifacts. I think that's the first thing. This photo is at 4000 ISO. The hue analysis filter will also help us because here we still have some blotchiness. We have some yellow spots. And if we increase that, if we just go forwards and backwards, you can see what's happening. Now we have a problem around the glasses here where we have them kind of spilling over. We're not going to bother with that for the moment. I'm going to increase the hue analysis just to have a better and even selection of the skin tones. We can also, if I zoom out, use the saturation threshold to select less of the other image, the other pixels in the photo. Let's just stay with the skin, maybe reduce the contrast to get some kind of a smoother transition between where the effect is placed and where it's not. So remove that. And then I'll show you again while we zoom how we can solve the problem of bleeding there with the glasses by using the effect radius. Now, the effect radius is spreading the effect out and therefore lessening it around the glasses. So that is one way to do it. Um, the other way would be to kind of do the opposite, is to kind of lower this hue analysis. You see, if I remove the effect radius, then we've got the blotchiness. And if I increase just that, then I'm also smoothing out, but I'm also losing some intensity. So that's the idea. I'll add a little bit more intensity with the hue analysis radius because I'm considering I'm choosing more pixels. So it's kind of a balance between the two. But the important thing here is the denoising, I think, which is the thing that will have an effect on the color equalizer more than the hue analysis and effect radius. Um, if we have a look at that now, we have an effect which is quite high on the flowers. So this is where um, the masking comes in. We'll have a hue mask. Just pick a zone round there on the face. Press M, get the mask, feathering, and there we are. We're already limiting the effect to only the flowers with a very slight effect, see before and after, which is hardly visible but still present here in the floorboards. Now, honestly, um, let me remove the mask. It is, I'm switching on and off, it's very slight. If that bothers you, then you can always go to a drawn and parametric mask and just select quickly around the area where you want the effect to be, and that will limit it there just on the skin tones, and there we have it, on and off. So that is um, one use of the color equalizer. Let's move to the last image then. Now in this example, I'd like to brighten the bee a little bit, make it stand out a bit better with the, I'll use the color equalizer for that. But just before, so you know how much I'm insisting on this, if I choose the background color and increase the brightness, then you'll see this kind of awful speckling. If I increase the analysis filter, then I get some blotchiness. It's not as fine noise because I'm choosing more pixels, but it's still blotchy. If I increase the effect radius, then I get a nice smooth background. But move this just to have a look. I'm getting some haloing around the flower. I'm losing the kind of natural transitions. And you think, what's wrong with the image? What's wrong with the module? Now, actually, there's nothing wrong with the module. I'll just set those back to the normal. The thing is, I haven't denoised. And if I denoise, then all of a sudden the image goes clean. So if there's something wrong, check your noise. That is, I think, first and foremost, um, the thing that will change your image. Okay, I'll set that anyway because it's the bee I want to change. I want to add some interesting colour to this bee, a bit of brightness maybe. The nose are already lined up, bit of brightness, bit of saturation. There we are. Maybe it's too much, but never mind. That's just for the demonstration. I'm also affecting other colours in the background. And if I affect the background, then I'm actually losing slightly the effect I wanted. So let's go into the saturation threshold. Now I can remove the lower parts of the bee here because first of all, they're in the shadow. And anyway, these are not very saturated pixels. I want kind of just the top parts of the bee to be affected. And the more I move that up, then the less I'm affecting of the rest of the image. So maybe not more than that. I can actually see more contrast, less contrast. I tend to prefer lesser contrasty um, transitions. And the effect radius, sorry, if I put effect radius here, well, it's not going to have much of an effect because I don't have sharp edges. I would if I was changing this stalk here of the flower. As I have quite soft transitions on the bee, this effect radius won't do much. And so we have something there. And then you know what I'm going to do next. If I don't want to affect the flower, or it's more like the leaves here, they're getting bright. Now, we might like that as a side effect and think, oh, that's not bad, it looks sunnier. We can also keep that. Otherwise, just a simple drawn mask. And, no, not the ellipse, drawn mask. Click, 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 click. There we are. And that effect is limited to the bee. So don't hesitate to kind of use all the masking we have, the filter, the guided filter, uh, um, and the drawn and parametric mask. So here you see I'm just affecting the bee. It's getting a bit brighter. There we are. So now I think it's up to you to try and find some images where you can practice and see if you can master this very interesting and long waited for module. And I will see you all later. Cheerio.